Recording in progress time. It is 9:30 on the 26th of August, our first day of class. Not the first day of classes. Hope you guys had a good first day. Um, I'm Dr. Gray. I will be your instructor for Chem 1310, and welcome. I'm not sure if anyone has taken an online course before. If this is your first time, I hope you enjoy this experience. If you've done it before and it was positive, I hope to sustain that. If you've done it before and it was a negative experience, I hope that this is a much better experience for you. Um, so for starters, I think everyone's gained access to our Canvas page. So that will be my primary mechanism of communication. Periodically, you might get an email directly from me, and that would be something that relates just to you. But more times than not, you'll get notifications in your email like what you've received so far, where it's an announcement. And please take the time to read that announcement. I do my best to not have like, hey, it's Dr. Gray. I've had one paragraph of introduction. Get ready for 3 to 4 more paragraphs of important information. I kind of have the view that if an email exceeds like one paragraph, that's something that's better done in like a video meeting. So I that's kind of a guiding principle that I will stand by and do my best to respect and practice. Um, just because I think that it's human nature to just get overwhelmed by information. And so, same thing goes, or if you haven't, if you've got a question about your grade or if you got some circumstance that you've encountered that oh, I'm just going to put all this in an email. It might be easier for us just to meet on Zoom. In which case, then we can volley back ideas. Like if you say, hey, I work from 8 until 5 every single day of the week. I can't carve out an hour and a half for this class. What can I do? I'd love to, I'd prefer, let me clarify, I'd prefer to meet with you on Zoom so then we can kind of put together some ideas. Now, I think that's probably the first thing that I'd like to address. And what I'm going to do today is I am going to share my screen and I am going to be writing on a PowerPoint presentation. And you guys, I'm going to save that file and post that to our Canvas site. Now, whenever I say writing on a PowerPoint, what I mean is just a second. Go. Now it's full screen for me. I've got a I've got a stylus and a tablet that I always used to write with. So over the course of the semester, when we're going through course content, I'll write on this and, draw your attention to certain things. So for starters, Chem 1310. I am working on my handwriting, but gotta be honest with you, I've kind of had the same handwriting since I was in, I'll say second grade. So we're looking at 34 years of the same handwriting. It's a tough habit to break and a tough thing to improve, but I am going to continuously work on it. So Chem 1310, we will meet on Zoom 9:30 to 10:50 Tuesdays and Thursdays. Being on a Tuesday or a Thursday, I don't think that we actually have any days of the week or sorry, any class meetings except for Thanksgiving, that our schedule is disrupted. We're going to do this, and one of the things that I will do is I will look for participation. And the way that you'll participate in this class is through poll questions. And I don't want this to get overly complicated. Um, so I'll do my best to explain it in a succinct fashion. But before I do that, what I want to talk about is I'll put it over on the right-hand side. Actually, no, I'm going to go to a new slide. Your grade. Um, Participation is a part of the grade. Your grade will be broken down to a couple of different things, and I'm just going to keep it, rather than say percent, I'll just call it points. Let's imagine that our grade is worth a total of 100 points. 10 points are for participation. Okay, so that's the first thing that we're going to unfold, and then we'll work from there. So you'll have Zoom polls. Now, these polls are typically going to be multiple choice questions, and um, I'll just prompt the question, it will pop up as a poll, and there you go. Now, with that in mind, that's not the only way that I'll be asking for participation. Zoom polls, typically, it's going to be 3 per class, period. And I don't, I, I typically try to have them one at the beginning, one at the middle of the class, and then one at the end of class. Now, these are not timed. It's not every 28 minutes, I will have a Zoom poll. I'm not going to do that. Instead, it's just like, hey, we're going to do one to kick things off, and then I'll ask one a little bit later, and then there will be usually one at the end. It's typically three per class period. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Now, that's not the only way that I want you guys to like be a part of the class. Usually, is everyone familiar with the chat function? What I like to do quite often, just to kind of see where people are, is I'll say, if you understand, put a letter in the chat. If you do not understand, put a number in the chat. That way we can get faster feedback. So, has anyone used the Zoom poll function before? If you have, put a number in the chat. If you have not, put a letter in the chat. Okay. So it looks like the majority of folks see that why I do this is so that I can get like a quick review. And I mean, it takes like 10 seconds for almost everyone in class to respond. But it looks like the vast majority of people have not used the Zoom poll function before, and that's fine. Um, Now, with that in mind, I do a little bit of a grace period for the first few class periods. Everyone's kind of working out how they respond to things, how they actually have their system set up. Some people are using like the Zoom app to respond, and I know that that displays different than a, a desktop or a laptop computer. So I'm I always have a little bit of patience and accommodations for that. Now, so participation that's kind of being assessed and graded is going to be in the form of these poll questions. Now, one question that people always have is, what if I miss one? And my response to that is no big deal. What I am looking for participation, for credit for participating in that day, is answer 2 of them. So, in some respects, it's a little bit to your advantage to have more questions, just because it's an easier opportunity um, in the event that you miss 1 or 2. Now, typically I have 3, but I'll add more as the semester wears on, or as the semester proceeds, and as the class necessitates. So if there's material that's particularly in depth and I'm like, ooh, I asked that question, but I think it'd be really good if I asked, 5 or 6 questions, so be it. I'm not going to scale up. What I'm looking for is to answer 2 of the questions. Now, give me a letter in the chat if you see that you have to answer it correctly, and give me a number in the chat if I don't mention anything about accuracy. You're right. I'm not looking for accuracy. Now, that's not to say, oh, when I give you a test or a quiz, I'm not looking for accuracy. That's just what I want you to do is I want you to feel comfortable to throw an answer in. Now, for some folks, this might be, I'm barely awake at my computer. Click. That happens. Um, I'm not going to lose sleep over the people who do that. I'm not going to lose sleep over like trying to find out who it was. Who is the person who is sleeping at their computer just to try to game the system? I'm not going to lose sleep over that because you know, I'm here to teach the people who want to learn. And if there's someone who's just like, "Oh, I gotta get this guy and I'm gonna be half asleep. Ha ha ha, what a sucker." Okay, congratulations, you won. Um, I kind of think that that's going to come back when it comes to an exam. Because if you half sleep through your exams, you might be in a little bit of trouble there. But we'll proceed. So what I'm looking for is responses to 2 of the however many questions. In the event that there are kind of some qualifiers. If there are no questions, I'm going to say poll. If there are no poll questions, well, what does that mean? That means, has anyone ever played Monopoly? Okay. Um, that's a bank error in your favor, collect $200 situation. Okay, so I see a message. Hate to be that guy. Can somebody tell me why we're putting numbers? Well, I appreciate the participation of, oh, everyone's putting numbers. I better put numbers. That's just my way of getting a quick response. Put a number if this, put a letter if this. And so that's all I was looking for there. Okay, so I see that almost everyone's played Monopoly. If I don't have any poll questions, then congratulations. Everyone gets credit for that day. If I only ask one poll question, well, if I only ask one, you can't possibly answer two. So everyone's going to get credit for that day as well. So there are some days where, it just didn't work its way into the progress or the rate that we're moving through the material. So bank error in your favor. Can you give me a number? Type a number in the chat if that doesn't make sense, or give me a letter in the chat if, okay, that makes sense. Okay, great. All right. So I like to ask poll questions. I also like to get quick responses. Um, Quick responses are not something that I'm grading. Instead, it's just like, that's my way of, I don't know if anyone's a golfer or anything like that, but that's my sensing the room, reading the room. Like, how's this getting across? Did I, just so you guys know, um, I use analogies to communicate and to teach. And there are some times that I use analogies and someone will say, like, that made no sense to me whatsoever. You mentioned the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Who is Willy Wonka? I don't know who that is. And so therefore your analogy falls flat for me. Um, so that's kind of where I'm going with that. So participation is going to be 10 points. Now, with that said, it's possible that there's someone in here who's like, oh, but I'm going to miss. Or I know that I'm going to miss the second Tuesday in September and the third Tuesday in October. Okay. Well, here's the thing. Participation is also where I have bonus points worked in. And what I mean by that is I'm going to, let's say that we've got two different people. So we're looking at the 10 participation points. Um, Somebody give me a name. Type a name into the chat, and I will use that. Ava, okay? And Kaylee. Perfect. There's my two names that popped up first in the chat. In the event that anyone is named Ava or Kaylee, I'm not talking about you. I'm just using these as hypothetical names. Okay. So let's say Ava comes to every single class and answers every single participation point. Ava is going to get 15 out of 10 participation points. Okay. So all polls answered. So Ava here has a little bit of a buffer. 15 out of 10, that means they got effectively 5 bonus points. Now let's say that Kaylee, on the other hand, Kaylee had to work on Tuesdays. And so Kaylee was present for half of the class period or half of the days. But when Kaylee was here, Kaylee answered all of the questions. So Kaylee effectively missed every other class. Okay, so Kaylee was absent. Kaylee would get, of the 15 possible points, Kaylee's only going to get half of those total points. So Kaylee would end up with, that handwriting kind of fell apart there, 7.5 out of 10. Okay, and then I see one more name, Gilbert. Let's say that Gilbert misses every single class period. Gilbert answers 0 of the poll questions. Gilbert will get 0 out of 10. Every class missed. Okay, can you give me a letter in the chat if you understand how there are bonus points worked in, or a number if, wait, I need another, go back. Give me some clarification. Okay, sweet. So effectively, you can get a 15 if you answer everything correctly. So I'm going to say 5 bonus points available. Okay, so it seems like based on this, based on the responses, we're good on participation. Now, with that in mind, um, if we go back, so I showed you this, or actually, I showed you that, and then I showed you this. What if I miss one? Okay, if there's 3 questions and you miss one, but you answered 2, you get full credit. Okay, what if there are 3 questions and I missed 2? Well, for that day, you get half of the credit. But I just stepped away to use the restroom. I'm sorry. Um, I'm not trying to be punitive or penalizing or anything like that, but if you are consistent in your like participation in the poll questions, you're going to be fine. There's 5 bonus points worked in there. If there was a day where you missed 2 poll questions, but you got one of them, you're going to end up with, 4.5 bonus points for the added to your final grade at the end of the semester. Okay, so now let's go here. The next thing is I'm going to just jump right into exams. There will be several exams. We've got exam 1, exam 2, exam 3, your final, and then actually the last 2 parts of your say homework and quizzes. Okay. So First thing is your exams. I'm gonna kind of exam number one, two, and three, and then your final. Your final is a standalone grade. Your final is worth a grand total of 25%. Each of your individual exams, sorry, 25 points, 15, 15, 15. So could somebody add that up and see where we're at right now? What's the total points from our participation and our exams? We've got 10 from participation, 15 from exam one, 25, 40 when we add in that, and then 60 and 25, 40, 55. Yeah, 80. Good. Sorry, everyone. 80%. So what that means is our quizzes are worth 10% or 10 points, and our homework are worth 10 points as well. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the exams just so I can make everyone absolutely clear of this. Um, and I'm not intending it for it to be overly complicated, but it is a little bit tricky. So, would anyone share? Let's see. Has anyone ever had a class where it's like, oh yeah, and I think I did this in high school at one point, um, where you have this option of, hey, your final can replace one of your exams. Has anyone ever had that? Add a letter to the chat if you've ever had that. Okay, pretty standard practice. Um, give me a letter in the or give me a number in the chat if you've ever had, hey, the final can replace two grades. Okay, okay. So what I'm going to do, I've done this before and I like it. Um, if you consider like any standard class, you've got your final and your three midterm exams. Sometimes it's two, sometimes it's one. Um, typically, what's the hardest exam in a semester? Sometimes it's exam one, sometimes it's the final. Okay, so the final is usually the toughest because it's like, well, this is all of the information coming together. And it might not even be that, hey, this material was super complicated. Chances are it's just a matter of there's so much material. Well, that's to me, that's just kind of inevitable. A final exam is going to be comprehensive. So our final, okay, so our final will be comprehensive. And it must be taken. Okay. So a few years ago, I started doing this, and I really like it. And I think the student consensus is that it's positive. So the way that I teach this class is I break it up into basically three different parts. And those parts I'll refer to as Module 1, Module 2, Module 3. So there will be a block of material that we cover in modules 1, 2, and 3. Give me a number in the chat if, okay, I follow that. That makes sense. Can't tell if nobody understands. Okay, okay, good. It looks like, okay, cool, cool. So, module number one at the end of module number 1, you'll take an exam. We're going to call that exam 1. Then exam number 2, or sorry, at the end of module 2, you're going to take an exam. We'll call that exam 2. At the end of module 3, we'll take another exam. We'll call that exam 3. Now, here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Exam number 1, that is just going to be over module 1 material. Now, exam number 2, that is going to be over module 2 and module 1. And you might think, okay, well, how is that to our advantage? Well, the way that is to your advantage is let's go ahead and have a hypothetical student. We're going to call that student Joel. That's my name. Let's say Joel rolls into class and shows up and takes exam number 1. And exam number 1, let's say that Joel gets a 42. Actually, you know what?
When? What'd you say? Oh, really? I was like, sit down. You said no? He was like, no. I was like,
I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Ryan. Is that all right?
I'm telling you to sit down.
Do you have a question? Ryan?
Right.
Sit down.
Okay, so I thought I had it to mute everyone, but I guess just be careful if you unmute yourself. Go ahead and do so if you have something to ask or something to say, but otherwise don't. Okay, so exam number 1, let's say that I get a 26. It's the lowest grade I ever got in college. It was in Calculus 1, because Calculus 1 is no fun. Okay, then exam number 2 rolls around. In exam 2, I've got a better idea of what's on the exam and the types of questions that the professor will ask. So on exam number 2, I'm getting 88. Awesome. Okay, that's good. And then exam number 3. Okay, I'm doing pretty well on things, and I get a 92. Okay, this is great. This is fantastic. Well, let's go back to exam number 2, and let's look at Joel's grade in the grade book. So, could anyone tell me in the chat what is the point total or the percentage that exam number 1 is worth? Add it to the chat. 15. Perfect. Okay. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to call this chunk in the grade book exam 1. And that is worth 15%. That's great. That's what I want. But here's the thing. This is going to be a category in your grade book. And this category in the grade book is actually going to have 3 things. One of them is your score on exam 1, the 26. The next is going to be, well, exam 2, the 88. And then the last one is going to be the final. And let's say on the final that Joel gets a 93. So for this category in the grade book, we've got 3 grades. What I'm going to do is set a rule, and that rule will drop the 2 lowest grades. So which grades are going to be dropped? Add it to the chat. The 26 and the 88. Okay, so let's take this student, Joel, and let's look at the exam 1 category, exam 2, exam 3, and the final. Joel got a 93 on the final, which is great. But now let's go back and let's switch this. And rather than talk about the exam 1 category, let's talk about the exam 2 category. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, the 93 is the grade that kind of determines that 15% of the grade. So exam two, that category worth 15% is going to have the 88, the score that you got on exam number two. It's also going to have a 92 in there because when you take this exam, exam number three, you are going to be answering questions about modules three and module two. And so that's why that 92 ends up there. And then the last grade is going to be the final. So now which grades are going to be dropped from this exam two category? 88 and the 92. So again, the 93, the score that was earned on the final, is the one that kind of determines the weight of that. Last but not least is the exam three category. Well, exam three is going to have a different rule, slightly different rule. It's going to just drop the lowest
That'd
grade.
be crazy.
Ryan, do you have something to ask? You've unmuted yourself twice now.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm just curious if you have something or if that's like okay, I guess it's a mistake. So we got a 92 and a 93. The grade that's going to go forward is the 93. So exam three is a 93. Okay, so effectively, if you do better on your final than any of the midterm grades, then your final exam brings all of those grades up. Does that make sense?
I have a question. What if it's the other way around?
The other way around? I'm sorry, I don't
Like if
understand.
I have a good grade in exam one, two, three, but I have a bad one in the final.
Okay, let's look at that. Thank you for asking that, Eliana. That's a great question. So I'm going to go to another slide and put this all together. So let's say that um, student. Then we'll go with, I'll just kind of lay it all out. Exam two, next three, and the final. So what I'm going to do is try to make it, that was not a straight line. I'll try to make a table here. And so let's see, E1, E2, E3, final. Okay. So, okay, so let's say on exam number one, you get a 97. Okay. Then I'll switch colors to make it maybe hopefully keep it clear. Let's say on exam number two, let's say you get an 88. And then exam number three, you get a 75. And then let's say, I'll go with an extreme. Let's say on the final exam, you just forget to show up. You forget to take the exam. That would effectively be a 0. Um, Actually, no, I don't want to do that. Let's say on the final, you take it and you get a 26. Okay, 26. Okay, so these are the scores that you get on these in-class exams. Can you give me a number in the chat if you follow that, or a letter in the chat if I don't understand? Okay, great. So in this case, I'm looking just at this row for exam one. So this is what is the 15%? Like, what's the score there? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at these scores. I'm going to say on exam one, for that 15%, you got a 97. Then on exam two, you got an 88. And then on the final, you got a 26. Okay, the final you did not do well at all on. So which grades are going to be dropped? Well, the lowest two. Now, exam number two. or yeah, on exam number two, we're going to compare the 88, the 75, and the 26. So which grades get dropped here? 75 and the 26. And then for exam three, we've got a 75 and a 26 that will compare to one another. So in this case, your grade is basically just determined. Your final didn't bring anything up. But at the same time, your final doesn't bring anything down. Does that make sense, Eliana?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is an extreme. This is a student whose scores got progressively worse. So I'm going to do one more situation with this same table. And actually, give me a number in the chat if this table makes sense, if it's clear. Okay, great. Then I'll model my next student's grades on this table. Okay. Wait, sorry. Doesn't. No, exam three does not include exam two. Exam two includes exam three, but not the other way around. Okay, so now I'll give this student a name. That student's name is Elton John. Chances are slim that pop sensation Elton John is in this class. So we've got our table. EX1, EX2, EX3, and the final. So I've given you two examples where the final brings everything up, and then an example where the final brings nothing up. Now I want to kind of show you an overall positive. So E1, E2, E3, and F for the final. Okay, I'm going to go back to color coding these. I'm going to draw a more straight line there. Color coding these. We've got exam one. Let's say this student gets a 75. Exam two, they get a 90. Exam three, they get a 15. 15. And then on the final, this student comes around and they get a, let's say, an 86. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll switch to generic color. For exam one, that 15% of their grade, I'm going to look at the 75, the 90, and the 86. So for this person, the second time that they saw the module one stuff, they got a 90. So that brings their grade up. So whenever I'm looking at the exam one score, I'm going to drop the 75 and drop the 86. Because the 90 was where they saw module one stuff and they did better. Now, exam number two. Well, I'll bring up the 15 and the 86. For this 15%, well, I'm going to drop the 15 and the 86. And then the last one for exam number three, I'm going to bring up the 86. And so I'll say, okay, well, I'm going to compare these two scores. The 15 will be dropped. So first question is, did their exam bring up any scores for this person? A Y or an N? It did. Their final exam brought up their exam three score, or basically 15% of their grade. Now, if we look at this person, student is their name. Did their final exam bring down any of their module one, two, or three exam scores? No, it didn't. And then if we look at Joel, man, I should have put it all on the table. For Joel, does their final exam score bring up any of their grades? Yeah, absolutely. It brought up all of them. So we've got kind of a progression. We've got this situation where the final exam brings up everything. We've got this situation where the final exam doesn't bring down any grades. And then this situation where the final exam brings up one grade. Historically, I've had students who fit into all of these different categories. I've had students who the final exam brings up all of their grades. I've had students where the final exam brings up one of their grades or brings up two of their grades. And then I've also had this, where the final exam doesn't bring down any grades, but yes or no to this. Does the final exam still impact their overall uh, letter grade for the class? It does. Because the final exam, add to the chat, what is the percentage or the weight for their final exam score? 25. It's 25% of their grade. So I always like to bring this up just so that there's no one who's like, oh, the final exam's optional. Well, this isn't a philosophy class. I mean, everything's optional. If you don't want to take it, don't. But it's going to bring your score down by 25, your overall grade down by 25 points. So even if you're surfing along at a 100 in this class and you don't take the final, you're going to end up with a C. Why you do that? I don't know. It's a bad idea, bad strategy. Um, but this is kind of like, so I bring this up just because there's always someone who they take their first exam and they're like, and I know from my own experience in college, it was like, oh, cool, I'll take my first exam and I'm going to study really hard. This is how I know to study. This is how I've always studied. Oh, that didn't work at all. I got a 26 on the exam. I didn't, what do I do? And I always had classes where it was like nothing. There's nothing you can do to come back from that. You just have to, hope that you can pull a C out of the class. Um, I think that that's counterproductive. So this is an opportunity to like, as the semester progresses, bring your grades up. Now, with that, when we go back here, can you give me a Y or an N in the chat if this block right here makes sense? The scoring of that. Okay. Now, this is a little bit tricky of a question, but for this right here, this situation where Joel's final brought up all of his grades. Effectively, what is the weight of Joel's final exam? It replaced all of his midterm scores, so kind of yeah, exactly, Louis. It's like his final exam is worth 80% of the grade. Now, what about this situation? What is the weight of this student's final exam score? 25. What is the weight of this student's final exam? 40%. Now, I mentioned this, and I really want to stress the word effectively. Everyone's is still worth 25%. Everyone's is set at 25%. Is there a chance that you could replace other scores? Yeah. And so effectively, that percentage might not be 25%. But that's not something I'm going to go in and manipulate and say, oh, well, yours was worth 25 and yours was worth this. Instead, it has to do with what is your final exam score replacing? Okay. Does that make sense? Y or an N in the chat. Wonderful. Great, 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 great. Okay. The last two items are quizzes and homework. Quizzes. Quizzes and homework. Now, these are both worth 10% of your grade, or they're both worth 10 points. Um, These are weekly and they are short. Typically, they're five to on a random day, 5 to 10 questions. And you have a set time of 20 minutes. Now, if you have an accommodation through ODS, then I've received that communication and um, I'll afford that extra time. Homework, these are basically short worksheets. Um, and they're pretty simple and straightforward. They are like usually usually 3 to 5 questions. And just as an example, there will be something like a solution. Here's an example question. Solution is 2.6 moles, and I don't expect you to know this terminology yet. 2.6 moles of NaCl. And, sorry, let me rephrase that. In 765 milliliters. What is the concentration? In which case, all that you're going to do for that is you're going to show a calculation that's 2.6 over 0.765. Again, this is information that I don't expect you to have right now, but when we come around to it, and then your answer would be whatever molar. So it's all just like super short. The thing that I would add is must be, I'll say, handwritten and submitted as a PDF. Uh, um, so it must be handwritten. Some people have a tablet, in which case, like an iPad or something like that, in which case they can use their finger to write their responses on a notepad or something like that. Then other people will just work it out on a piece of paper, take a picture of that, throw the picture into a Word document, and export it as a PDF. Um, but I will clarify typed answers equals 0 points. Um, so there you go. Then let's see. Is everyone clear on those two things? Quizzes and homework? And a Y if you are, and N if you're not. Sweet. And homework, this is I'm always aiming for the homework to be relevant to what you're doing, like leading up to the exam. Same thing goes with the quizzes. Um, and so I'll always try to have questions that are relevant to that. Oh, and quiz questions are typically going to be multiple choice, but sometimes they are multiple select. And when they're multiple select, those are questions that are like, select all of the true statements regarding this. Um, Multiple choice would just be like, well, select the correct answer. Um, let's see what else. I think those are pretty much the important points. Um, does anyone have any questions before we proceed? Sweet. Okay. Um, and I'll always send out an announcement like, hey, a quiz has been posted. It is due on this date. Um, you'll have for quizzes, what I always like to do is 2 attempts, but I hide the grades. Um, so you can look back at your responses and kind of reason out like, oh, well, I answered this. Um, let's see, I can take another attempt at that. I don't think that's right. Try something different. And then ultimately, though, highest grade counts. Um, okay, and the last thing that I want to talk about today, or that I'm going to talk about today, is our exam dates. Um, there's a couple of things that are important for you to know with respect to exam dates. And first of all, the final exam. That's what I want to go to first, and I want to share this with you. So I'm going to throw this link in the chat. Everyone in the meeting. So this is your final exam schedule. If you go to this web page, this is the registrar's homepage, fall 2025 final exam schedule. What you need to do is look at this first column that says class meeting days. Oh, dang it. Roar! Now I'm filled with rage. I'm not. Okay, class meeting days. Our class meets Tuesdays and Thursdays, so we got to scroll through here and Tuesdays and Thursdays. But what time does our class meet? Our class meets from 9:30 until 10:50. So our final exam, Tuesday, Thursday, 9:30 to 10:50. Our final exam is Tuesday, December 9th at 8 a.m. So I will go ahead and go over here and I'll say our final exam is 12, 9, 8 till 10:30 a.m. Okay, now our other exam dates. We have, did I switch my share? Yes, I did. Great. Um, we have 3 exams. So basically you could look at them as end of September, end October, and end November slash start December. What I always like to do before an exam is I like to have a review period. So the class meeting immediately preceding the exam, there will be a review. And that applies for all of these days. Um, Now, policies regarding the exam. Could anyone add a Y to the chat if you've used Proctorio or N to the chat if you have not? Okay. So it looks like I saw one very dramatic response. You gotta see what that is. That's a lot of, okay. So many of you have not used Proctorio. That's our lockdown browser. Um, what I always do, Proctorio, is I add a practice quiz. And this will, whenever you go in to take this this practice quiz, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post that today and I'll say, have it done. Let's say, usually I do, sorry, just a second. I got to see dates here. Um, do this by 9/8. So September 8th at 11:59 p.m. So I'm going to say, hey, take this practice quiz by the 8th of September, 11:59 p.m. Um, and this will basically check to make sure that your computer is configured to use Proctorio. Many folks will run into an issue where they cannot or they are unable to. And they'll get a prompt like enter Access code. Proctorio automatically enters the access code. I do not have an access code for you. So if you are prompted, hey, enter the access code, then you're not going to have anything to do. In which case, the reason that you're being prompted to enter the access code is because Proctorio didn't open properly. Chances are that's like a browser issue. So, browser issue. In which case, you need to update your web browser, or maybe you have a pop-up blocker. So, update or pop-up blocker. If you have a pop-up blocker, that will prevent Proctorio from working, in which case it will you'll get that error. Um, you can contact me, and what I'm going to say is, hey, have you tried a different browser, or have you tried to disable your pop-up blocker? And if you've tried both of those things and they did not work, then I'm going to say contact ITAC at txstate.edu. Um, and they'll help you resolve the issue. But if it's not one of those things, it's possibly like a security update on your operating system. Basically, everyone that I've had in this class who encounters an issue, it's resolved by either updating your web browser or updating your operating system. I've only had one student over the years who was unable to get it to work, in which case I found a resolution, but that's how Proctorio works. So I will post that Proctorio practice quiz before the end of this week. It will be up and you will need to do it by the 8th of September at 11:59 p.m. If you do not do it by then, you'll just not get a bonus point. The Proctorio practice quiz, again, I'm not looking for accuracy on this. I'm just looking for completion. One bonus point on the, well, I'll raise the stakes. Two bonus points on final exam. So it's worth your time to do it. Um, I do give out bonus points, and it's not like crazy trivial knowledge like who batted second in game two of the 1981 World Series for the home team. I'm not going to do that because somebody knows that, but I don't make the bonus points so like extreme that nobody ever gets them. Instead, I'm usually like participation are the things that I look for bonus points. So Proctorio is what we use for administering or proctoring your exams. You need to make sure that it works before the exam date. Um, and just because if you don't do that, then I get a bunch of frantic emails like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Then the next thing is our exams are during our class period. Our exams are usually 30 to 40 questions. QUE questions. Um, what I do is I take our class period and I build in like a 15-minute before and after. So really our class period that starts at 9:30, you'll be able to start the exams at 9:15 and it ends at 10:50. So really it's until 11:05 is the window that you can take it, but you have 60 minutes to complete it. Unless you have an accommodation, in which case I honor that. One thing is that if the this is your testing window from 9:15 until 11:05. It shuts down at 11:05. So if you say, "Oh, I'm going to start my exam at 11." Add to the chat how many minutes you will have to take your exam if you started at 11. 5. So is starting your exam at 11, we'll go with a G for good idea or B for bad idea. Yep, it's a B. It's a bad idea. Um, how many minutes will you have if you start your exam at 9:23? 60. Perfect. Um, if you encounter some sort of extreme circumstances where, I mean, if you email me right now and you're like, oh, I know that on Tuesdays at the end of September, I have to go on a work trip. Well, I can probably help you out with that and figure some other sort of accommodation. Um, but I really just like to take the exams during the class period. That's the best situation to do. Now, with that in mind, what if you miss your first exam? Well, what I'm going to do if you miss your first exam is I'm going to say, hey, your second exam can replace your first exam. Your final can replace your first exam. So if you miss your exam, then I'm just going to say, hey, your final or your second exam and your final can replace that. Let's just move forward from this. Um, I've had students who have missed exams and they still end up with an A in the class because there's bonus points and because your final exam can replace it. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? And you can unmute yourself and ask or type them in. If there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And I'm going to say